Good morning, Comrade. You are listening to WHIV-LP New Orleans 102.3. This is Good Morning, Comrade. Guess who's back? Back again. Robert's back.
Them boys are up to something. Them boys been spending 2 or 3 weeks up out the country. Jumpman.
Where you been, man? I've been trying to. Yeah, I've been having to bring in guests all the time. What's going on? Where you been?
I've been in the socialist utopia, better known as Northern Ireland.
Socialist utopia.
I mean, I'm joking, but I'm only kind of half joking because, oh God,
also
so much.
Tax haven, by the way, one of my favorite tax havens.
Oh, it is, and it's killing them now. Actually,
yeah.
That's why like the whole Celtic Tiger voodoo economics thing, but that's not really important right now. What's important is, when you go to Ireland, and specifically Northern Ireland, you just realize like the whole idea of we're a first world country with a Gucci belt is 100% true. And how many times I said, why do we live the way we live in the United States? Mm-hmm. It doesn't make any sense. Like, I step outside my hotel and there's light rail, there's buses, there's double-decker buses, there's just so much public transportation. There's, Belfast is a walkable city. I was in a little town, a tourist town in the Republic of Ireland, and
the good Ireland.
Well, no, it's all good. Yeah. All of Ireland's good. It's just one you still have to use euros, and the other one you have to use pounds. That's all. But they're all good boys. They're all good doggos. But like one little tourist town had a policy to where you couldn't get coffee or tea takeaway to go in a store cup. You have to either supply your own cup, or you can buy a municipal cup from it's like a made out of tire rubber or whatever, that the city produces for £2 or €2, I should say, and then you just use that cup as your reusable cup. And I'm like, why doesn't the city of New Orleans do this? I'm like, this would work, especially in the city of New Orleans, because one, businesses would love it. Coffee shops would love it because they don't have to like spend their profits buying more cups. The city could make a little bit of money, like recycling all the tires out in the East and selling them to people. And then like cups aren't going into trash cans. So it's like, it's just basic stuff. You're like, why in America do we live like this? And I'm joking when I call it the socialist utopia, because like I'm so into not only like I did the whole the Troubles tour, and it was so amazing. It was so amazing. Like our cab driver was like, so what do you know? And I'm like, well, and I have a Sinn Féin jacket that I bought over there, but I didn't wear it on the tour because I didn't know where we were going to go, and I wanted to be respectful of people. And if you don't know, Sinn Féin is the political wing of the IRA, and they have full power in the North now, in Northern Ireland, which is still the UK, and they're on track to be the dominant party in the Republic of Ireland. And once that happens, they're going to call for the vote of Irish unification, and it's going to pass, and Ireland's going to be one country again. But the point is, I didn't wear that jacket because I didn't know where we were going to go, and I wanted to be respectful. And the guy was like, so what do you know? And my wife Erin just blurted out kind of like, well, politically we're leftists. And he goes, great, good. And so he took us through the unionist, the loyalist parts, the Protestant parts of the neighborhood. And it's like, there's just all these like murals of just like, we're going to kill every Republican that steps foot in here that are still up. They still have like the quote unquote peace wall that you have to have bomb cages like in front of your house because people used to launch, Molotov cocktails and firebombs over the wall.
like the thing that Palestinians get murdered for.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we went, and so I was like, there was a mural of the Queen and of Queen Elizabeth, because she just died recently. And I'm like, yeah, and the cab driver's like, yeah, you can look at all this stuff, like whatever. And I'm like, man, I'm not a fan of the monarchy, but I do like good art. And he's just like, that's not art, it's just a print. He's like, I'm gonna take you to some class art. And I'm like, cool. Because we didn't stop through any of that. He was just like, you wouldn't want to stop in here and get a pint, let me tell you. And he's just like, yeah, look at that. He's like, all the UDP, which are the old, the paramilitaries. He's like, they're all drug dealers now. They're all scumbags. And then he took us to the Catholic neighborhoods. He's like, you want to get out? Yeah, and we're like, absolutely. So it's just like, there's like murals of like Nelson Mandela and Palestinian murals and Bobby Sands stuff. And it's just like, it was amazing. And I guess my point is like, I'm talking to him. I'm like, I feel like I'm going to have to apply for political asylum, half joking pretty soon and move here. And he's just like, ha ha ha. I'm like, and I was like, you really don't get it though. I'm like, you don't understand how bad it is in America. And what I mean by that is you're looking at me and you're looking at my wife and like, we're reasonable people. We share, the same politics. We care about the same stuff. But the amount of people who have the privilege and the money and the time to take a trip across the Atlantic to come to Ireland and then want to take this tour is like infinitesimal. Like, you don't understand how bad it is. Like, we are on the verge of what y'all went through 20 years ago. And he was like, really? And he's like, yeah. It's like, I sit there and I watch the Doll, what the Doll is, it's the Irish Parliament. And I'm like, I've been captivated by it. I've been watching it every night in my hotel room, like the equivalent of C-SPAN in Ireland. And I'm just like, you guys have the not the president, because they have a president and they have a prime minister. So the prime minister is they call the name for the prime minister is the Taoiseach, which is, it translates into Irish to chieftain, which is the hardest title I've ever heard for like a dignitary, like a head of state. And he is half Indian, half Irish, and gay. And he is the representative of the right wing, like because the center right party is in power right now in the Republic of Ireland, Southern Ireland, and so you've got him, and he is like, if you were to like transplant him from Ireland to the U.S., they would call him a commie. He'd be Bernie Sanders, right? And so he is duking it out with two different parties, Sinn Féin, which is like the second largest party in Southern Ireland. And then there is a party, the People Over Profit Party, which is like the third or the fourth most popular party in Ireland. And if you've been watching the stuff with, you've been watching TikTok or a lot of the clips like coming out of Ireland when they're talking about Palestine, the guy with like kind of the receding hairline who looks like really gruff and like screaming about genocide and kicking the Israeli ambassador out of the country. That guy's from the People Over Profit party. I can't remember his name. But so you've got two different parties screaming at the Taoiseach, falling over each other, screaming at each other about who can deliver the most social and economic justice to the country. And I'm just like, this is like another planet. This breaks my brain. It doesn't even compute. I'm like, this, I was telling people, we really talk about politics and stuff. I'm like, I know y'all have a lot of problems. I know y'all just came through, 20 years of bombings and killings and you have a problem now with like the, because of the voodoo economics of the Celtic Tiger, the, housing prices are astronomical. Wow. And you have like not an immigrant problem, but you do not a problem with the people coming, but a problem with like people can't afford affordable housing. Right. And companies are just coming in here because they're a tax haven and they're siphoning off money that's not getting recirculated back into Ireland. It's going back to the States or China or wherever. I'm like, I know you have all these problems, but this for me, an American coming over here and seeing all this, this is a utopia. Mm-hmm. And like you would look at it, was like I had a horn, like they couldn't believe it. And I'm like, you just do not understand how bad it is. You don't understand how bad it is.
I mean, it's not the material conditions are similar, but like the at least the rhetoric is entirely different, because what they're saying here is like, we need to make sure that we destroy whatever kind of government services we could possibly have,
right?
And put everything on corporations and businesses to like save us or whatever, which is just like the opposite of what is possible or true.
Right. No, 100%. Just to give you an idea of just like, so again, the Taoiseach, the prime minister, the center right guy, his name's like Leo Vedic, I want to say, but his big thing that was to deal with the immigration quote unquote problem was he was going to pay for individual, like anybody who wanted to leave Ireland and go back to their home country, he was willing to fund that trip back to their home country for anybody who wanted it. And that got shouted down, and that was a red line where people were like, absolutely not. This is against our values. This will not stand. We will tar and feather you in Dublin if you even attempt to do something like this.
Well, that's almost like what
compared to what we have here in America.
Like, remember when Mitt Romney talked in 2012 about like self-deportation? That sounds extremely similar.
Exactly.
Except it's like subsidized self-deportation.
Exactly. But I mean, the point is, it's wrong and it shouldn't happen. And the people who are extremely upset that live in that country have a reason to be extremely upset. But God, dog, like if they were to come to America and they're just like, oh, well, just underpay them, the ones that we want to keep the rest in concentration camps on the border, and who cares what happens to them?
And like razor wire and like salt,
yeah,
like in between buoys in our like netting that we have or whatever. Like
so I mean, like the U.S. is a sick, crazy, dying empire. It's a sick, crazy place. And once you like step out of the United States and get to see like how other countries function, like reasonably and without the levels of dysfunction that we have, you're just like, why do we live like this? I mean, we know as socialists why we live like this, but just the average human, it's
the average human doesn't really even pay that much attention, right?
Yeah, the average American, I should say, not the average human.
Sure, the average American doesn't pay that much attention, and they're worried about I would even argue that like most Americans don't even like if you poll them, and I think there is evidence to back this up. If you poll them on like 90% of what we like espouse on this radio show, they would largely be in agreement with things like raising the minimum wage and collective bargaining for workers and union representation and all this stuff that we talk about that like makes us weird, like marginal, crazy, like lefties or whatever. Like most people actually do agree with us. But the thing is that things are never kind of like presented in a straight way, like in a clear and direct way. They're always sort of presented in such a way that is, filtered through the main. I hate to be like the lamestream media or whatever, but like there is a very specific filter that goes through in order to get to people. So like when you talk about things like there's tempering of public opinion for over generations when it comes to things like the Cold War, and just sort of like just making people afraid of even a whiff of what could even be close to be, and it's still real and it still really exists, but even a whiff of something that could be like even associated with communism, when we never did get any of that like sweet social democracy that a lot of Europe got after the Second World War, especially. I mean, we're so far behind when it comes to having any kind of government that even like pretends to represent working people. You know what I mean? Like the only thing that the like the political parties and the sort of political system has to offer for us is like, who do you hate? Do you hate the billionaires, or do you hate the poor and the immigrants and the minorities or whatever? And it's not like I mean, I'm not going to say like it's fine to hate billionaires. Totally, you can hate billionaires all you want, but like it's not a project of building anything, not even from the Democrats. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
a project of where does your animosity and your angst go towards?
Well, I think what happens in Ireland, and this is just my like guess after being there for a couple of weeks and reading, about the history of the country and just what I knew already going in. I think they're a very special case, as far as their culture, where as far as like social and economic justice is just, it's almost baked into their culture to where even let's say you don't care about immigrants, you don't care about the Palestinians, you don't care about anything like that, right? You don't care about anything social justly, but you live in Irish. It's kind of part of your cultural mythos, like your creation myth. When I'm using the word creation myth, and not the actual literal term, but like your origin story, your as like a comic book character, I would say, is that being treated, from day one as really just genetic, inferiors to the British, because it wasn't just like, oh, we're going to dominate you because you're right next door and we can. It was, we're dominating you because you're scum of the earth. You're the Irish and you're not as good as us. And I feel like even with the American Revolution, yeah, that those pesky colonists are fighting the empire, but it would never was that like these people are inferior. And I think that's a lot of the reason why Ireland. So even if you're a right winger in Ireland, you kind of got to be like, well, I can't go that hard, because at some point, if I go super hard on, racism and xenophobia and homophobia and Islamophobia and stuff like that, I'm going to bump up against our creation story. I'm going to bump up against the third rail of our creation story, and people are going to turn on me. Mm-hmm. I think that's what happens.
Violence is going to flare back up if you do that again,
Right.
And I mean, again, just to sort of like, connect this to what we're seeing right now in Gaza and in Palestine, is that part of the way and part of the reason, or part of even the rhetoric that the Israeli government and Netanyahu himself and all of his flunkies and ministers or whatever whatever warmonger cabinet he has, they're constantly dehumanizing Palestinians and basically saying that they're like equating them to like roaches and like dogs.
Yeah, absolutely.
As less than human, and that is a justification for killing them. And right. So they're like, I'm not saying that I'm sure things get extremely horrible and heated in these sort of like parliamentary situations in Ireland or whatever, but there's like a real connection to that like kind of dehumanization and violence that I'm sure that it feels like at least nobody really wants to go down that road anymore.
Yeah, and it's not even that nobody wants to go down that road. It's just you're going to be dealing.
It's real and have seen it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Even if you're the biggest scumbag in Ireland, like you don't want to be like. It's almost to a point where, okay, so Americans, we can wrap our racism and xenophobia up in our creation story, to where like you can't, you can't really be in. You can kind of touch that like in Ireland for Irish, but you can't go hard on it, because once you start going hard, you're kind of no longer Irish. You're like betraying your forefathers at that point. To where like our society, like our original sin is, racism, sexism. So it's as natural as that. It's as American as apple pie. Yeah. Genocide and oppression.
Oh yeah, exactly. Well, who were the people that were less than human for Americans?
Oh God.
It was the natives and the African slaves and like everybody that we basically subjugated and like literally made lesser than, and made them either like slaves and servants to white Americans, or just killed them and like
Right.
exterminated them, and did multiple repeated genocides over the course of the history. So there's never been a situation where the United States has had to grapple with the like reality of you are American just like us or anything like that, because literally we just killed them. We just
Yeah, absolutely.
them, or created our own concentration camps and called them reservations or whatever.
It was just a very surreal 2 weeks of just like walking around a place that experienced, apartheid on a very small but very violent scale. And while, people are being, ethnically cleansed in Palestine, is like, it was a very surreal experience. Like, I don't know. I'm looking at this wall. That's still to this day, to 2022, they have, not, I won't call them checkpoints, but there is like like gates on the wall, on the peace wall, that close, that differentiate the Catholic and the Protestant neighborhoods, that close every night at 6 p.m. They come and lock that. They come and lock that, and you have to go all the way around if you're to keep people from, like, I guess, coming in at night and do. They're like, if you want to come do something crazy, you're gonna have to really put some effort into it, because you got to go all the way around.
Or you're gonna do it during the daytime.
Yeah, or during the daytime. Yeah, and it's just really been like me. I know I've been thinking about like what this show for like a hot minute. Like, oh, we're gonna sit here and it's like I'm trying not to use FCC non-FCC get us banned fined terminology, but we're gonna sit here and pat each other on the back about how moral we are that we support Palestine. And I'm just like, but that's like speaking to the choir, because anybody who's is listening to this is going to have the same position as us. Like, we're not going to reach anybody. My thing, the thing I've been really blessed with is that my father is Jewish, and he also hasn't been Jewish for very long. He's a convert. So I'd say like he's been Jewish for less than a decade. And so he still has like the zeal of the converted. Yeah. And his wife is like, my dad's just like, he looks like a football player. He's a, big black 6'2" guy. Mm-hmm. And he's married to an Ashkenazi Jew, like my stepmother. And I've been talking to him, instead of trying to bring a point of like, my dad's a moral man, but he's also a lib. Like, he's a lib, he's a fence sitter, but also you have to understand he's a black man in America in the 60s and 70s. Mm-hmm. And so he did what he had to do to like navigate culture. I get it. But instead of trying to talk to him about right and wrong, I've really been concentrating on like, okay, objectively, let's talk about how what Israel's doing right now is making you sitting here in Florida unsafe.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Like, let's talk about how they cannot win here. They cannot achieve their objectives. Like, let's talk about the actual objective facts of the situation. What's that? And
really like making like actually getting out of people like what are the objectives of Israel in this situation is enough in certain instances to like at least shame people a little bit. Maybe not.
Well, okay. So in short, let's talk about it like this way. I've heard it when we talk about like American politics or even like police actions. I think about it. Yeah, I think a good idea is like a police action here in the state when like a cop shoots an unarmed black man or anybody. They shoot an unarmed anybody. It's a bad shoot. And they're just like, oh, it was a super mistake. And it's like, are you dumb or are you evil? Because you have to be one or the other. And I'll explain that when I'm talking about Israel. So if you want to talk about, and I'm pretending when I'm talking to you with the language I'm going to use, I'm talking to somebody that doesn't agree with me. So I'm trying to appeal to logic and not appeal to emotion. So that's why I'm going to use words like terrorists. But if you want to talk about how to dislodge and materially, disempower and ideologically disempower a popular embedded terrorist organization on your doorstep. If you really want to know how, if that is your that's the goal that you've stated, that also has, what did they say, like miles and miles of tunnels underground that your bombs aren't going to be able to destroy or hit, and you're not going to make a dent against this terrorist organization, because objectively you're not making a dent against Hamas that you say is an existential threat.
No, but you are killing a lot of civilians.
So this is my point. This is what I'm getting at. If that is your stated goal, how Israel is going about that is the absolute worst possible way you could do it. And we've learned this twice as the United States, once in Vietnam, once in Iraq and Afghanistan.
In Korea as well.
You cannot dislodge a popular guerrilla, asymmetrical fighters, whatever, without appealing to the thing.
We learned that in the Philippines.
Yeah. I mean, and you're going to say the reason why in Iraq we were just doing that. There's a good podcast I've been listening to. It's like Rocco's his name, and I can't think of the pod, but if you look up Rocco Navy SEAL podcast, the guy was a Navy SEAL, and he's saying the exact thing, and he's a war hawk, he's a warmonger, he's not a lib. He was a Navy SEAL that was in Iraq, and he goes, well, during the Battle of Mosul, until we started supplying people with their material needs and getting them to trust us.
Is it Jocko?
Yeah, Jocko, that's it. They couldn't find out where the ISIS fighters were, because the ISIS fighters were supported by the population. And the thing is, they were supported by the population not because they even wanted them there. It was because they were the only thing that was stable. They knew the U.S. would come and go. So once the U.S. started providing for the Iraqis' material needs, and then they could build a relationship, then they would receive intel, and then they could do targeted midnight no-knock raids and round up and kill ISIS fighters, right? So that's the thing you would want to be doing in Gaza if you actually wanted to, quote unquote, destroy Hamas. You wouldn't be bombing people, killing their children, and that's for sure creating more, quote unquote, terrorists who are just, imagine you and I, right? And I'm saying this to, you and I, we're just guys. I'm just a guy that goes to work. I punch the clock every day. I up. Now I'm not in Hamas. I don't care about any of this. Bombs are falling on my wife works up the street. Bomb falls on her building, kills her. I have nothing left to live for. Guess what? Hamas just gained another fighter. I'm going to say, pass me an AK and show me to the tunnels. That's what's happening right now. So again, this is the worst possible way that you would want to deal with this problem if it is your actual stated goal. But this is the perfect way to do genocide and ethnic cleansing. So again, are you stupid, or are you really bad at your job, or are you evil? It's one or the other, and neither are acceptable.
Or both.
No, I don't think, no, they're not bad at ethnic cleansing. They're not bad at that, because they do all the steps of ethnic cleansing. You look up the steps, they do the denial, they do the dehumanization, they do the indiscriminate killing Israel does. They're really good at being fascists. What they're not good at is governing a state and keeping their own citizens safe.
Well, I guess you have to assume, I guess probably the fault in even assuming that is that time and again, the Israeli government has shown that protecting its own people is not really a priority, at least not any more anything more than a justification for more violence. Right. So oh no, obviously what happened, what Hamas did on October 7th was significant in terms of an attack on Israeli citizens. However, there were many hostages taken, And what does the Israeli government do but like bomb the same place that the hostages might be? They essentially don't have any regard for the lives of the hostages for anything beyond like more of a bloody shirt to wave.
And you know who agrees with me on this is Bibi Netanyahu.
Yeah.
Because he has been quoted as being like, we want to support ISIS because ISIS. We want to support Hamas because the more we fight Hamas, the less we have to deal with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank where there is no Hamas. Because that would open up a 1 or 2 state solution if we have to deal with the Palestinian Authority. We don't want to do that, even though we control the Palestinian Authority. We want this forever war until we can slowly strangle and kill everyone and create this one race ethno-state that they want to create. And I think by coming at it that way, because the conversations I'm having with my dad, I'm really like turning him around. He's really been like, well, yeah, I see what you're talking about, and I kind of hit him with the nuclear option, and I was like, Dad, I feel bad about telling you this because I don't want you to feel bad about Judaism. I do want you to feel terrible. Yeah, I want you to feel terrible about Zionism. But, if you and Betty, that's his wife, I said, if you and Betty were like, you know what, we're going to take a holiday, we're going to take a trip, we're going to go to Turkey. I'm trying to think of other Muslim countries like you'd want a vacation to. We're going to go to Turkey. We're gonna go to anyway, I'd have issues with him going to Dubai. I'd be like, you can't go there because of right and wrong morality issues. But I don't know. Let's say he wanted to go see the pyramids. He wanted to go to Egypt. I don't know. Whatever, right? I'd be like, cool, have fun. Take a lot of pictures. I really want to see these places. Tell me what you see. If he was like, I'm going to Israel with my wife, I'd be terrified for him. Because on the best case scenario, he would have his heart broken by the way he and Betty would be treated there. The worst case scenario, something violent would happen to him because they call it a Jewish state, but it's not even about being a Jewish state. Him and Betty would be wearing. Can you imagine an Ashkenazi woman and a Black American man married? They're both Jews walking around in Tel Aviv. They'd be spit on. Like, you can see videos of this. There's people like you can look at what Israel, the state of Israel, forcefully euthanized Ethiopian Jews because they didn't want the Ethiopian Jews, quote unquote, polluting the Ashkenazi gene pool.
You mean sterilized?
Sterilized. I'm sorry. That's what I said. Euthanize. Yeah. Apologies. Sterilized. Thank you. But that's what we're talking about. Like, them being Jewish would not protect them there. Mm-hmm. They would be in danger of the ethno state. The only thing that might get them any kind, and you can Google this, Google Black entertainers Black Jews who have gone to Israel, Black entertainers who have gone to Israel, and the way they've been treated. It's some of the worst racism that you could think of in the Jim Crow South. It's equal to. And it's like, because they don't care. It's not about Judaism. It's about creating a Zionist ethno state. Brown people not allowed. Mm-hmm. And it's disgusting. And if you want, you said something a little bit ago about like, I know you were just kind of about like, Hamas. I've given this a lot of thought. Like, that was terrible. What happened on October 7th? That was terrible. And let me tell you right now, if you're here, you're listening to this, you're probably in the United States. You do not have to go around condemning Hamas.
No,
no. Let me. I put it on my Facebook because I thought, and I said and I'm going to my Facebook right now. But I had an interaction with somebody just on YouTube or whatever, and I'm just going to put exactly what I wrote. I did the whole "this is terrible," but it doesn't excuse apartheid. Israel's a genocidal state. Like, that's got to end. these terror attacks will end when the apartheid ends, right? That kind of thing.
Bottom of the hour, you listen to WHIVLP and 102.3. This is Good Morning Comrade. Go ahead, Robert.
So and then this guy replies to me. God, I feel like I'm almost in like a Russia, like remember back in the day when like everybody online was accused of being a Russian bot? I swear to God, there's like IDF psyops all over. Yeah, I swear there are, because they'll say something wild and then I'll reply and they don't reply. And that's usually not how an online exchange works. Usually people like go at each other for a while.
For hours.
But anyway, this guy replies to me, "You're apologizing for Hamas. That's vile." And I replied to that, "No, I'm not. I don't live in the Middle East. I can't support Hamas even if I wanted to. But I do live in America, and my tax dollars are supporting genocide, ethnic cleansing, and apartheid. So if you want to blame me for something I unwillingly give support to by force, we can talk about that. Other than that, save your pearl clutching." Because there's no way me condemning, or anybody who is not connected to Hamas, condemning Hamas does nothing. Yeah. I live in America, where my money goes to support this death, this ethno-state regime that's in a death spiral. So I am culpable of that. I am guilty. And that's why I'm arguing so hard and fighting so hard in any way I possibly can to make that change. But yeah, it's so frustrating. There's never been a popular uprising that's been, supported by the people, that's been defeated by Western governments. And that's what Israel is. It's a Western, it's a Western puppet state. And they're going to go in here. That's why they're holding off. They're holding off of doing an actual ground invasion because
they're doing it. It's under.
Oh no, I mean, no. What I mean by that is they're in Gaza Strip, but they're out in the open. Mm-hmm. The idea of going into Gaza City and doing house-to-house fighting against a force that has been done nothing but has dug miles of tunnel, got all the necessities they need to stay down there indefinitely, has, food, water, supplies, electricity. They've been building these tunnels for over 10 years, and the population supports them. Bro, that is a bloodbath. Like, that's why, generals in the U.S. have been screaming, like, y'all, like, do not do this. Like, learn from our lessons of
history
of Vietnam and Iraq. Like, you do not want to. It's not going to end well for you. And that's what I mean by, like, the regime of Israel is in a death spiral, because if they do that and these 19, 20-year-old IDF, good-looking IDF kids start popping up dead, the Israeli populace is not going to stand for that, and they're already on the brink of a civil war, so it's like the politics is the only answer here. Like, war and more death is not the answer, and that's not me being a peacenik. That's me being
practical,
like the actual answer to this is just it's not military. It's not a military action.
No.
And my last rant here is, like, this is a thing that I don't understand, and maybe you can answer this for me, and maybe we can get somebody who has a better idea of the US's geopolitical stance. You want to talk, like, let's talk realpolitik for a minute. What we're dealing with in Israel, like, is a country, a state, an ethno-state that...
An apartheid
state that had the worst, besides, like, the Middle Passage and the Trail of Tears, like, the worst possible, it's called a Holocaust for a reason. The worst possible thing to their people that could happen, that's happened in world history. And so that gained them a lot of political capital to do what they want, as long as they were our, like, client state. And they, in 48, so that's 50, 70 years, not even 100 years, have burnt through all that capital to where the whole world is lined up. And it's like, y'all are wilding. Y'all are just like, y'all told the Nazis to, like, hold my beer. Let me show you how this thing is done.
I would agree with you up into the point where it comes to that, like the rest of the world is turning against them, simply because, um, like the West, basically, the United States, Great Britain, and several other key governments in the sort of like balance of the world,
Mm-hmm.
and Joe Brandon himself is backing Israel to the hilt.
I get
Like,
that. I get that.
regardless
But
of
when I
whatever
say people, I actually mean real people.
atrocities
And
they
but I don't mean governments. I actually mean real people. Is what I'm saying.
definitely turning when it comes to human beings.
So that makes a difference because now I would say almost like you've got Joe Biden will lose the state of Michigan now because Arab Americans in that state have said en masse that block if we're just not going we're going to stay home. And so like I don't see how he wins the presidency. So this is moving into politics to where like the people on the street, good, bad, or indifferent, are having an effect because you're seeing all these other countries that honestly before this, countries like Turkey, Saudi Arabia wanted normalization with Israel and Israel wanted normalization with them, but the people in their own countries are like, now that this genocide is happening, they're saying no, we do not want normalization with this rogue state, and you better do something about it. And you've got like an Erdogan in Turkey who's talking tough right now, but he's talking tough because people already he's not popular. So he's talking tough because he has to at least pander to the view of we're not going to let our brothers and sisters in Palestine, no matter what they actually do, be treated like this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would just push back a little bit on.
Go ahead, push back.
Just because his basis of power is not. He's not in the position of power because he's popular. He's in the position of power because he's got the right clients, if you know what I mean. He's got the right patronage network. But like in terms of the sentiment of people, I agree. And in terms of like making political maneuvers to at least appear as though you're going to be you're appealing to people, there are leaders that are doing that.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying about that, but in that with that same line of thinking, if the people, the popular movements line up against leaders in those countries, his client states his client states aren't going to jump in there to save him. They're gonna let him fall. And try to get whatever they can out of the new government that arises out of that. What I really like about that though is all this conversation we're having is how, especially because I'm a TikTok addict, how younger people are intersectionally they're grouping all these issues together. So you're not just hearing like, oh, this is a genocide, oh, this is murder, this is a slaughter of a race, of a culture, of a people, which is all true. You're hearing a lot of, where they got universal health care? Israel. You know who doesn't have universal health care? Me. What is going on? Yeah. And that brings me to my super last point, I swear. And what I was saying is trying to get somebody who understands a geopolitical space better than I do, is that I don't understand the U.S. position to where, like, let's be real, going back to the real politic. Israel is our colony. That's us. That's our attack dog.
It's not a colony. It's a state. It's like basically the 51st state.
You're right.
It's basically that's all I'm saying. It's like,
we mess with them so we can have a foothold in the Middle East. When did we allow the tail to wag the dog? I don't understand it. Why is the 51st state, if you want to call it, our colony, whatever, why are we allowing them to dictate U.S.? We don't even do, this is how you know the United States is in decline. It's in its death throes. We don't even do empire well. And it's like, because a real empire would say, hey, you making this, a real mafia boss is, what the U.S. tries to be with its hands and everything all over the world, would say, hey, Israel, you making the whole block hot. Cut it out, or we'll cut it out for you. But we don't do that. So I'm like, why is the tail wagging the dog? This is a real question that I really don't understand, and I really would like a good answer to.
Yeah, so I can't answer the question in terms of like geopolitical whatever, but I can say that one of the things that I think that sort of like this completely blind and utterly, to the hilt support of Israel is doing is it's shearing off a lot of the left and
Mm-hmm.
like a leftists and like socialists from the sort of like progressive Democrat part of politics right now. So, and I don't think this is an accident. But like we're seeing some of these lines very clearly. Bernie Sanders, for example.
I do not
As
understand.
soon
I don't understand.
well, so as soon as the attack happened, he basically did a statement on how Israel has basically a right to defend itself, and like that's got very little to do with anything to do with the victims of the violence or anything like that. John Fetterman, who is a sort of like extremely sort of progressively viewed
Waste man. He's means nothing to me.
Well, he basically came back with like as hard of a Zionist position as you could possibly have. And so what we're seeing right now is a sort of and I don't, again, like I said before, this is not an accident, a cleaving between the sort of like progressive politics, the progressives and the left, just by bringing this issue up, by using this issue in this way to sort of divide the left. And as of right now, I don't know, like it's hard to blame people. And this is actually in a moment where the labor movement is on the rise. We've seen this week the UAW has had victories at all three. They have tentative agreements at all three of the big three automakers. We're actually at a moment. Actually, Tesla. There's a UAW union forming at Tesla right now, which is so insane. And we're seeing, all this Starbucks organizing and things like this. There's internal division even within the labor movement. You would see like Randy Weingarten, who is president of the American Federation of Teachers. She tweeted on October 7th that this was Israel's 9/11. And basically has not called for a ceasefire, has not done any of this stuff. While you have this sort
ironically, ironically with that. Oh, you cut out. I'm sorry. I was going to say, ironically with that, I 100% agree with her. This is Israel's 9/11, and they didn't learn any of the lessons from us. Or they're just evil.
Yeah.
Going back to my beginning, are you stupid or are you evil?
Or both. But at the same time, like you'll see the sort of like more younger, the more sort of like left oriented parts of the labor movement being in this case the Starbucks workers organizing. They released a statement in solidarity with Palestine. If you or Christian Smalls, who I mean we've been critically supportive of, I will say, on this show. But I mean, he's been very much posting about how he is 100% supportive of Palestinian. Even it's just there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of drama there, and a lot of internal division. And I don't think that's necessarily a bug of the system. It's a feature. It's a way to sort of divide and create confusion among the left, just by an issue that is for most Americans not one that's particularly material, unless you are like connected with the state of Israel, or if you are connected to anyone in Palestine, like you're going to have a feeling one way or the other. However, at the same time, this is not like socialized medicine. This is not raising minimum wage, and I'm not saying that this is something to be ignored. Absolutely not. You can't ignore genocide. Are you crazy? Mm-hmm. But like, this is one of the ways that historically empires and nations generally have used war to divide essentially the working class in whatever country it is. And the only answer isn't to the only answer is a rejection of war and a rejection of apartheid.
Well, this goes back to my original statement of I'm really seeing, I think if I'm going to look for a silver lining here, I think this genocide, I refuse to call it a conflict or a scuffle or a war or whatever cute terms they want to put out there. This genocide, I feel like what young people are doing is seeing the interconnectedness. They're seeing the intersectionality of it, and they're tying it to all these other issues of, why does my country give billions of dollars to Israel every year that is actively making me less safe here in America? Mm-hmm. We're actively less safe with that apartheid, that racist apartheid state doing what they're doing a genocide, and and again, just going back to the realities of the situation, I just don't understand in what world you're doing apartheid. You've built an illegal border wall. You've cut people off from food. Not cut them off. Water. You've trained people. I'm going to use the word trained. You've trained people how to live with no food, no water. They can't have concrete. They can't have proper medicine. You've trained them how not to live in a dignified way, how to survive. They've built, what did they say, hundreds of miles of tunnel under Gaza or something crazy like that. Mm-hmm. And you think sitting on the other side of this wall, going to raves, eating Starbucks and everything else the empire provides and brings over there, sitting over there fat and happy with your Iron Dome, you think you're going to go in there and defeat these people militarily? You must be out of your mind. Immortal Technique said one time, he was talking about Afghanistan, but it's the same thing applies. He's like, you think you're going to outsuffer these people? You lost. A couple of your people got killed in a Hamas raid. God bless you. That's terrible. That should never happen to anybody. Talk to that same guy that I talk about. His whole family is just got vaporized. What do you think he's going to do? He's got nothing else to live for except revenge and to try to kill as many people before he gets killed. And you think you're going to militarily defeat that? You think you're not going to do politics? God help you. God help you, because you're in a fight you cannot win.
Well, the sad part is that I do think that it's something that's militarily, it's solvable, I think. But, it would have the thing that would have to happen would have to be so unthinkable and so horrible. They would just have to do, full top-level, extermination of every human being. And then that would also come with the cost of it. And I don't know. I don't think that they have that in them. You know what I mean?
Let me tell you. Let me disagree with you and tell you why you're wrong. Okay. Mm-hmm. So let's say in this scenario. I'm saying let's say in this scenario. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm saying that Israel doesn't have that in them.
Well, let's say they did. Let's do that thought experiment. Let's say Israel finds some kind of a magic kill switch and can go in there and completely eliminate Hamas. Let's say they get their wish and complete their genocide and they kill every Palestinian there. Okay, the state of Israel is now intact and exactly the way they want it to be, right? Now you've got this country that just committed mass genocide and erased the history and culture of a whole people and population that was there before you, and you came and colonized and exterminated. Great. You've got the state of Israel now the way you want it. Your borders are now Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. Good luck. Good luck. Yeah. Good luck with that. How safe do you think that's going to keep an Israeli? If you could militarily defeat the Palestinian people, because that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about killing Hamas. They want to kill the Palestinian people in mass, total, gone. How safe does that makes the average Israeli citizen less safe? Politics is the only answer. It's the only answer. It's the only way out of it.
Yeah.
I see we're running up against it. So sorry.
Yeah. Well, just sort of like we've gotten, pretty dark in this episode, but, just to sort of like wind us down, like, you know, um, the last thing that I just want to talk about, and this is even like me just grinding an axe. Boy, oh boy. Whoo, buddy. The thing that I don't want to like hear from people right now at all, the last thing I want to hear from anybody right now is, oh, by the way, Joe Biden has been supporting this genocide in Israel, but you're still going to vote for him, right?
Absolutely
like, are you kidding?
Oh, you know what? You know what? What you say that is that, okay, so if I lived, I'm going to say this right now. If I lived in a state, personally, me, Robert Johnson, if I still lived in Ohio, things the way they are now, nothing changes. The election, it's election day. I'm still voting for Joe Biden. I hate myself, but personally, I'm going to do it. But I could not look another American in the eye that would tell me I am going to stay home because I can't support, I can't pull the lever for somebody that's actively funding a genocide. I'd be like, God bless you. I'm like, I think you're making the right call. I could never tell somebody that, oh, you need to come vote blue no matter who. Like we are so beyond that. It's absolutely insane. We're so beyond that. Yeah, you're right. I've not hear nothing from nobody.
Oh, I'm hearing it already. It's a problem.
That's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know. That's sort of like where I think we should leave it. Is this is something, again, when we've seen these like genuinely good things come out of the and I don't even have to put it on any individual. Like, you go with God, you vote for whoever. Joe Biden in the last couple of weeks has seen his job approval rating dip into the 30s, based on his handling of this situation, which is essentially, whatever Israel wants to do, we got their back, essentially. However many bombs they want to drop, how many hospitals they want to destroy, however many mosques they want to blow up, it's cool with us. Just make sure you're following international law when you do it, which is ridiculous. And the sort of consequence of that, isn't going to be that, it is not going to make him look. He is getting the worst of both worlds. He's supporting a genocidal regime that's right now, and he's losing support in this country.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even that backing the genocide is popular. It's just he's screwing it up for everybody who, again, the prospect of another Trump administration, another Trump NLRB, more Trump appointees to the Supreme Court. He's backing a genocide and then screwing up American politics from the little bit of progress that he was able to move things forward as little as it is. And that's just I just cannot get over it right now.
And that goes to my point of I don't understand what's going on. I'm like, what are you possibly doing?
Mm-hmm.
And we're shutting it down.
Mm-hmm. We got to shut it down, but yeah, it is really kind of like I feel extremely dual pill at the situation. Well, anyway, Robert, tell the people bye.
Bye. Free Palestine. Remember, you are not responsible for what bad people do, but you are responsible for what your government does. So keep shouting at them, keep screaming at them. Send John Fetterman a text like I did today that says, I'm not giving you any more money, because they ask me for money every day. And download the 5 Calls app so you can call your representatives and tell them to let's not be culpable in the indiscriminate murder of a whole racial population. Let's don't do that.
Cool. Ditto. You can listen to Good Morning Comrade every Saturday on WHIVFM.org. listen or 102.3 FM in New Orleans. Getting more information about our show by going to goodmorning.comrade.com. Thanks everybody for listening. We love you. Bye bye.
See ya.
All right.